We're just gonna talk about this movie. So Midsommar. Yo, who the f So my boyfriend and I like to do this thing where we date each other. It's a thing, it's totes consensual. We're both an equal part of it. We decided to make dinner together and watch a movie. My independent movie loving ass decided to pick Midsommar. And I follow A24 Films on Instagram, and they had posted a screenshot of this movie saying that Midsommar is this century's like most dark, twisted, psychological horror film ever made. And that tickled my titties a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's like when a mascara says 97% say they saw improvement, 100% say it paid their rent type of thing. Like, it's a huge flex. So I was like, bet. We ate tomato soup, chicken nuggets, and dinner rolls. That's not important or crucial to the story in any way. It's just important to me that you guys know that. So the movie starts out, boom, act one, set up immediately. So the movie starts off with a phone call to the parents, amazing B-roll. There's trees. You see the parents sleeping. Oh, by the way, spoils alert, but also maybe not spoils alert, because I'm definitely gonna forget parts of this movie because this movie is long as shit. My hair is incredible. Her name is Dani. She's calling her parents. She's like, hey, I just was wondering if you guys are okay. Terry, I think that was her name, sent me a weird email. I just want to make sure everything's okay. I know you guys have been fighting. I guess her sister is bipolar and she's just kind of going through a little rough patch, and sends her sister, who is Dani, star of the movie, a weird cryptic kind of email, and she's like trying to figure out like what's going on. So she calls the parents. The parents are asleep. She hangs up the phone and then she calls her mans, that is her mans. I forgot what his name is, but he kind of looks like the Walmart version of Chris Pratt. And she's like, hey, I was just wondering if you were gonna come hang out with me tonight, but turns out he's hanging out with his boys. I think his name is actually Chris. I forgot. It's very well established that their relationship isn't the greatest. It is established very early on that he's not the greatest boyfriend ever. Like, he's no Brandon Ferris, is what I'm trying to say. So the boys are talking about like going to Sweden for a month for like a festival because one of their friends is Swedish. I think his name is Mark, and he wants to invite them to his place where he grew up. He grew up in a commune, blah, 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 blah. It cuts back to him getting a phone call from Dani where she is screaming like a blood curdling scream. And let me tell you, they nailed the acting completely. And you're like, what is going on? He's like, babe, what's going on? Like, talk to me, tell me. And then it cuts back to the parents' house. 2 cars are on in the garage and firefighters are turning the cars off. There are no bodies in the car, but the exhaust is going, and there are hoses taped to the exhaust pipes of the cars. Some of you might be ahead of me. This is all in silence. This movie is scored to the illest amount of score it can get. You know that whatever's happening, it's not good. The other ends of the hoses are taped to the bottom of what happens to be the parents' bedroom. So remember when I said they were sleeping? Turns out it was the permanent one. It's gonna get real deep for a second. She killed her parents. Terry, the little sister, going through an episode, it is established that she is bipolar, kills her parents, and then it pans to her bedroom where homegirl has the other hose, because remember there are 2 cars, taped to her mouth. It's a hard scene to watch. Backstory, the person who directed and wrote this movie also directed Hereditary, which was also a movie that was hard to watch. I didn't even finish Hereditary. I did fall asleep. This one was different. Dani has lost both her sister and her parents in the first, I shit you not, 10 minutes of the movie. So the setup, act 1, is introduced, and then you're like, sold. It doesn't really tell you how long it's been since she has lost her parents. We'll just call it maybe like a couple of weeks, maybe a month. She's clearly still going through it, and the boys reluctantly invite her to go to Sweden with them. I guess after a loss like that, I get it. They get on the plane. She's clearly in pain. And like I said, Mark, the one who's actually Swedish, is the only one that's like excited to take her. He shows her pictures of what the festival is gonna look like, what it's gonna be like, shows her a picture of the May Queen, which is mad foreshadowing now that I look back at it. So Chidi from The Good Place, the guy from We Are the Millers, the Swedish guy, and then Great Value Chris Pratt. And they start tripping out immediately. Like they take something to go like on a trip. And I don't mean like a trip, because they're already technically on a trip. I mean like a trip. They're going to a festival and they just immerse themselves in the culture immediately. It took me back to like once upon a time when I took an edible in a movie theater. We won't talk about that. They're introduced to another couple at this point that another friend of Mark's invites from London. You immediately get a Get Out kind of vibe where the people who are already born and raised in the community start bringing people from the outside. And you're kind of like, suspect. They finally get to the festival. And the first day is super chill. They just kind of get introduced to the place. Hi, how are you? Blah, 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 like what's happening. They put their bags down. They get shown their room. They start doing this dance in a circle. And then homegirl, we'll just call her red hair because I don't even think she has a name. Oh wait, no, Maya. I think her name is Maya. Pretty name, pretty hair. Let me set this one up for you. So they all sleep in a room. It's basically like a barn. There's beds everywhere and they are told that from ages 5 to 13 or 5 to something, all the kids sleep in one barn. And then from ages 13 to 26, some people sleep in another barn. And then from ages 26 to 50 something, I'm not really getting this right because I forgot. Then somebody asks, well, what happens after you turn 72? And homeboy literally goes, and you're like, oh, he's joking. It's an old people joke because old people die. Put a pin in that. They wake up and they have breakfast and they're all standing at this table. Mind you, everybody is in like these white tunic garments, but the outside visitors. So you can always clearly take them out from the crowd and see like their expressions and like their confusion basically because they've never been there. As they're standing, two elderly people walk up and sit down. At this point, I was like, we're gonna watch people die. They have food. And after they eat, the two older people stand up and they say some stuff in Swedish or whatever language the movie is taking place in. I don't know. And then they get put on these like lifty chair things and they're carried out. And then the rest of the guests go and stand under a cliff. When they're standing on the bottom of the cliff, they look up and they see these huge boulders. But at the bottom of the cliff, there's an even bigger boulder that's kind of flattened out. And the guests are there watching up. Remember when I told you, oh, we're gonna see people die? Well, the old people are walked all the way up the cliff. Some of you are ahead of me. And they slice their hands and they rub the blood on the boulders that are on top of the cliff. They get to the top of the cliff. The old woman jumps off first because the future is female. And she lands like head on the boulder and bounces off. And you see everything and she dies instantly. Turns out she was 72. And turns out homeboy wasn't lying. Then old man walks up to the cliff, hand sliced, and he jumps off. And then we look back to the screen to see he didn't die instantly. He just broke his leg and he's in incredible amounts of pain. And you want to know how we knew he broke his leg? Because we saw his leg clean off. We see tissue, we see blood, we see everything. Old guy doesn't die, but don't worry because there's a man with a giant hammer. And because the old man isn't completely dead yet, they call up the guy with the mallet. Some of you are ahead of me. Do you see now why I didn't want to do my makeup while talking about this movie? This one had to have its own moment. So that happened right in front of everybody, including Dani, her boyfriend, and Chidi. He has a name in this movie, but it doesn't matter because he's still basically Chidi. The tourists from London, obviously they're flipping out. I would be too. I mean, I get it. I've never experienced a movie this real. And you think, wow, couldn't possibly get any worse than this? Again, hold your caballitos because it does. The guy who invited them is trying to calm them down and telling them like I should have explained what was gonna happen better. But I can't even imagine that conversation going well. Like what's the best scenario? Hey man, tomorrow, hold on, we're gonna witness two elderly people commit suicide. What? In the morning? I mean, yo, who the f? I do want to apologize if this is getting into subjects that are hard to listen to or anything like that. And I will tell you right now in this video, and never watch that movie if these are situations you do not want to listen to, anything like that. They all leave. Once the couple gets back, they're like, we want to go home now. There's no need for us to be here. For some weird, daft reason, they decide to stay because I guess Chidi and boyfriend are like trying to write their thesis on this entire festival. So they're still intrigued and they're still really trying to get something out of it. And suicide, I guess, just wasn't enough. I think I forgot to tell you, while they were dancing, this little girl, the Maya girl, kicks the boyfriend and kind of like gives him a little kick, like a little flirtish kick. And then she puts like a little love stone under his bed while he's sleeping. I guess it's to cast a spell on him, like a love spell. And then Chidi asks one of the elders, hey, what does this mean? I found this under my friend's bed and I saw that one of the young girls put it under his bed. And he was like, oh, like that's like a love crystal. That's to make somebody fall in love with you. And then the friend goes on to explain, yeah, her name is Maya, and last year she got permission to be a woman. And Chidi goes, hey, what? Elaborate on that, please. And then the friend goes, oh, what I'm trying to say is she now has permission to mate. Oh, okay. Yeah, so put a pin in that. In the first day, they walk past a lot of tapestries that are hanging. These tapestries are composed of like quilt squares, basically. And it starts off very innocent, very beautiful. You see a sun, you see a moon, children playing, and then you see a girl and her flower, and then you see a zoom in of the girl's flower and what is illustrated to be the girl picking petals off of her flower, so to speak. And then you see the girl's flower leaking pollen into a cup. And then you see the girl handing the cup to a man and the man drinking said cup. And then you see a bear. You see a girl picking her pubes and then putting her period blood into a coffee cup. I'm sorry, I was just worried some of you guys wouldn't get the metaphor. You're just listening to it, homie. I had to watch it. And then you actually see a live bear, and then you see the bear in flames in a cage. So a lot's happening. Let's go back to the lunch portion. Dani is pulled in to help the women cook, and the men are out doing something. But the reason that Dani gets pulled into the kitchen is because she is looking for Connie's boyfriend, and you can see that her backpack is packed and she's carrying her bags. Connie, by the way, is the couple that I mentioned that are from London. Connie's the girl. She's looking for her man. She is stopped by one of the people and is told, hey, your boyfriend actually left to the train station in a car. Another car is gonna come pick you up and you guys are gonna leave together, but the two of you guys couldn't fit in the truck. And then Connie goes, yo, he would not do that. Again, suspect, am I right? Cut to later on that day, like in supper time, Dani notices that Connie is now missing. Dani's on top of this. She gets it. She's like, yo, he would never leave her, and now she's not here. And let me paint the picture of what this scene looks like. Everybody is served lemonade. Lemonade is yellow. They are all sitting at this table. It is now Dani, Chidi, the boy from We Are the Millers are all sitting, and in front of them, their glasses are yellow. Boyfriend, on the other hand, has his pie, and his glass is slightly pink or red. He takes a bite from his pie and he feels a hair. And it's not just any hair. Some of you might be ahead of me. At this point, he feels the hair, but also he feels eyes on him. And it's redhead Maya staring at him with passion eyes as he bites hair pie and drinks the reddish lemonade that only he has, and only he found hair. And also, he was the only one that got the love stone I would have been out after the weird trip, if I'm being honest. So Chidi is still trying to get his thesis done. So he's honestly there with a purpose of trying to gather stuff. He meets up with an elder who is reading to him and kind of explaining the book that has been being read basically throughout the whole festival. They're just scriptures. They start talking about incest. It's a whole thing. And then Chidi asks, hey, would you mind if I take a picture of it? And homeboy immediately closes the book and says, no, you may not. Chill, bro. I'm not gonna take a picture of your book. Nobody wants to take a picture of your book. What's your white beard, scripture looking ass? While all this is happening, homeboy from We Are the Millers has to pee, and then he just takes out his willy wank next to a tree. Turns out it's also a sacred tree, and he's basically peeing on ancestors. Dude, like, you can't do that. Like, this is a very terrible thing you just did. And he's like, I'm sorry. But it's like, hey, he didn't know. It's squashed at this point. It's squashed. He eventually gets taken. I think he got taken away actually at the brunch. And at that point, you never see him again. Chidi wakes up at night because he's a little sneaky sneak, goes into the barn, makes sure that nobody's awake, starts taking pictures of the sacred book that he was not supposed to be taking pictures of. And then he sees the friend that peed on the tree. It's him, but it's not really him. It looks like him wearing a mask of his own face. And then something is missing from his body, and it's the thing that boys pee with. Stay with me here. And then Chidi dies. So one by one, you could see all the tourists are getting kind of picked off. The couple is gone. Homeboy from We Are the Millers is outskis. And Chidi just got killed in the face. So it's now just Dani and her boyfriend who are left. They invite her to join in the dance festival. That's basically an endurance contest, and they have to dance, and the last girl dancing is the winner. And you guessed it, she gets crowned the May Queen. Foreshadowing. They crown her, they carry her to the feast, they eat what is assumed to be a goat. They give her boyfriend something to drink that is laced puras pinches drogas, and he's tripping out the whole time. Then she is told, hey, it is customary for the May Queen to go and fertilize the plants and the animals. And she is like, hey, well, can my man come with me? And they're like, nay, you must go alone. But also because they want to get homeboy alone. At this point, they have told him, hey, Chris, right? Turns out homegirl Maya, who is now approved to mate, mind you, she has taken a liking to you. And don't worry, we've done the research. Turns out you guys are a perfect astrological match. And we want you guys to, you know? But like only if you're interested. But like also, you don't have a choice. And he is drugged up the spout. Yeah, so like no consent in the chat. Because they're basically like, hey, imagine us inviting you and hosting you for 7 days. And just imagine you not being gracious enough to have sex with one of our own. Like, just imagine. So they take the May Queen away, which is Dani, all whilst homeboy is taken into a barn. He has a robe on him, and then they make him sniff something for vitality. This whole movie should just be called Sniff This, Drink This, Take This, and a whole bunch of titties. We're getting to that part. He is pushed in, not pushed. Well, at some point he does get pushed. So he gets taken into this room where Maya, in her infinite nudeness, is sitting in a bed of flowers, laying like this. It is very reminiscent of Beyonce's like baby shower picture, very much like that, but they are not alone because surrounding Maya is a bunch of women, also in their infinite nudeness, just boobs and bush everywhere. He is then exposed. So boobs and bushes and guineas, and he is taken to the woman who is ready to be penetrated, and she opens her legs and receives him. And then the sex happens. And it turns into an experience for all of them because as Maya is receiving him, she reaches out to one of the ladies who starts singing to her, which, I mean, it could be a really beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong, I get it. Like, sometimes during sexy times, you gotta put on some Brian McKnight or some Kenny G to serenade you. I get it. It's a real different thing from having a moment with your significant other and having Brian McKnight on Pandora than having sexy times with your mans and having Brian McKnight hold your hand and sing in your face while you are getting plowed. There's a difference. There's a line. And all the while, Dani is coming back. And at first, it was just one Brian McKnight. You know, it was just the one girl singing to her. But then all the other girls start harmonizing and it turns into like a choir. And basically their whole job is to score the situation that's happening on the bed of flowers in front of them. At this point, Dani comes back in her carriage and she hears it as she's getting down. And she's like, hey, baby girl friend who just fertilized the soil with me. Not like that. It wasn't sexual. The sexual thing's happening in the bar. Stay with me here. And homegirl hoes, baby girl, don't even worry about that. That does not involve you. But Dani knows, because women always know, and our intuition is something else. So she goes to the barn and she sees through the huge keyhole. She catches her man cheating. As 15 other girls score the damn scene, obviously she is in pain and she lets out the most blood-curdling scream. Just like in the beginning of the movie, you hear her scream. She is in pain. She just lost her parents, her sister. She just caught her mans. And just like in the barn, how all the other girls are echoing homegirl's feelings of pleasure, in this other barn with Dani, all the girls surrounding her are echoing all of her feelings of pain. It's one of those parts in the movie where you're like, this is so intense, but this is so real. As intense as that scene was to watch, you gotta give the writer credit for doing something like this, because this movie is incredibly real. The only thing you couldn't do was smell this movie, but I tell you, like, it's incredible how they landed with this movie. Anyways, back to the plowings. He is doing his business, but one of the ladies says, you know what? He needs some assistance. Yo, I poop you not. You see an elderly girl who's elderly, but not quite 72 yet because she's still alive. Go behind homeboy and start pushing him into her. This is also not crucial in any way to the story, but it's important to me that you guys know this. He freaks out because I think he starts coming down and he realizes when he's done and he starts freaking out even more. So he starts running away naked. Just see a bunch of this happening. He stumbles into another barn that we haven't really seen yet up until this point. And there's chickens in there and there's goats and then there's a dead body. $10 if you can guess who it is. No, you're wrong. It's Connie's boyfriend with flowers in his eyes. Told you it got worse. Before he runs into the barn, what actually makes him run into the barn is he gets afraid because he sees a foot kind of planted into the ground. There's weeds, there's flowers, there's daisies, and then there's a foot. And it's a Blackfoot. $10 if you can guess who that was. And then he gets caught by the elders in the barn, and then they blow something and he immediately passes out. And then it cuts to a scene where they are in front of the barn that is basically a yellow triangle. It's the barn that nobody's ever allowed to go in. And you see the May Queen, Dani, and she is covered in flowers. She is basically in a mountain of flowers. They are on a stage, and on the bottom of this stage is her boyfriend in a wheelchair, completely paralyzed. The only thing he could do is blink. I don't even know what was in that powder, but it hit hard. We're definitely in the third act now. Everything has come to a resolution, because you know what happened to Chidi for sure. You know what happened to Connie's boyfriend. Some characters missing, but you basically can now put together they were killed. And now in this ending ceremony in front of the forbidden barn, the lady opens the book and says thank you to Mark for bringing in outsiders, and they also give a huge thank you to the other guy who brought in the outsiders from London to sacrifice. You could have already assumed this, but they purposely brought in their friends to be killed. And then it is said we have to do our 9 sacrifices. At the moment we have, honestly, I don't know, I forgot, but it's Chidi, the boy from We Are the Millers, the couple, the 2 volunteers, 1 other person who I do not remember, and it is up to the May Queen to pick the last sacrifice. One of her choices is either another person who volunteered or boyfriend who is sitting in a wheelchair completely paralyzed. You guys remember I told you about the quilt square where the bear was in flames? They put the ex-boyfriend, because remember he's paralyzed, in the bear's corpse, I guess, because they remove everything from him. So they kind of stuff him into this bear suit that is an actual bear, and they take him into the barn and place him in the center. And the elders are telling the 2 men who are completely alive, take this sap or whatever the F and feel no pain. Goes to the other guy that also volunteered, hey, take this sap, feel no pain, because we're about to light this bitch on fire. All 9 bodies in the bearskin. Turns out the sap doesn't really work because you hear the men screaming in pain that they're burning alive. And then everybody else dies. And then you see the May Queen, Dani, stand up in her flowers, and she doesn't say a thing. And then the movie just ends. And you're left to think, hey, like he wasn't the greatest boyfriend, so maybe he forgot your birthday. But damn, you don't gotta burn the boy over it.